So we're on Daf Yud Dalid, and we are a few lines down from the top. Amalei Shmuel. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 lines down from the top of Yud Dalid Amud Aleph. Amalei Shmuel L'Chia bar Rav. So Shmuel is speaking to Chia about his father Rav, about Chia's father Rav. Bar Aryeh, he addresses Chia as the son of a Talmid Chacham. And the word Aryeh is used to refer to a Talmid Chacham, an Adam Gadol. As we say very often, Arisha b'chabura, he is the lion of the entire group. Ta emelacha, come and listen to me, and I will tell you milsa mahani militim aliyah. So I tell you some of the great things, the dvarim tovim, tavi amar avuch, that I heard directly from your father. And obviously, a son is very eager to hear the Torah of his father. So Shmuel is going to share with Chia the Torah of Rav, Chia's father Rav. In the previous sugya, we learned about a river that has some sort of divine, supernatural qualities to it. And on a daily basis, God creates Malachi Asharis from this river. And the purpose and the responsibility of these Malachim is Amri to recite Shira. And as soon as they recite Shira Takadosh Baruch Hu Batle, they immediately disappear. Because a malach is meant to serve a function and serve a purpose. Shenemar apostle in Eicha, Chadoshim Labakarim Rabba Emunasecha. Every day there's a new chiddush, and that is malachim are created, and through their singing, their lauding and praising Hashem, there's a ribuy of Tehillah Secha. Now, very often we interpret Rabba Emunah Secha as referring to God's faith in man, so to speak, that God believes in man and in man's potential. But in this particular context, in this Rasha, Rabba Emunah Secha is a result of the Shira of the Malachi Asharis. And it's interesting that this pasuk, or shall I say immediately before this pasuk, it says in Eicha, it says, Chazdei Hashem kilo samdu. So it means that there's a certain chesed of Hashem, kilo samdu, that's mischadish b'chol yom, some great thing. And that's the creation of these malachim that recites Shira. Pliga de Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, however, Rav in this context is contradicted by the Shita of Shmuel bar Nachmani. The Omer of Shmuel bar Nachmani, Omer of Yonasan, called Dibur v'Dibur sheyotim b'Kadosh Baruch Hu nivra mimenu malach echad. From every utterance of God, a malach is generated. Shenemar, as it says in Tehillim, bidvar Hashem shamayim nasu, uveruach piv kol tzma. So this is different than Rav. Rav understood the malachim were created from Nahar Dinar, not from the Dibur of HaKadosh Baruch. Now, Tosfos is a little bit wondering here, why can't we reconcile this and say the following, that Rav is talking about the daily creation of Malachim from Nar Dinar that are misbatlit, whereas Shmuel is talking about Malachim that are created from the Dibur of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Those are different Malachim. Those are not the Malachim that necessarily are here and then they dissolve. And in the Masechet, he quotes in the notes the Chagigah that Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani says there are malachim that are created on a daily basis from dibur, from the utterances of God. And therefore, if we go back to the pasuk, which was quoted by Rav, of Chadoshim L'Bekar Rabba Masechet, that pasuk, it would seem, might be referring to these malachim. And therefore, Rav could not base himself on this pasuk and derive the conclusion that these malachim are created from Nar Dinar, because they are created, like the pasuk says in Var Hashem Shemaim Nasim, from the Dibur of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now the Gemara brings another steer in the psukim. Pasuk Echad Omer, the pasuk in Daniel, who sees in his vision HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says, Levushe, his levush, his with a capital H, is kislag chivar. It's like white snow. Usa'ar reshe, and the seir of his head, all this is kaviyachal. Obviously, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have neither a head nor seir, but kamar nikeh. It's like very white fleece or wool, very clean. So that's one description of the levush of HaKadosh Baruch Hu as Daniel perceived it. However, when we get to Shlomo HaMelech in Shir HaShirim Perek Hey, that Knesset Yisrael is describing the Almighty, it says Kvutzosav Taltalim Shcharos Koreh, that the sorrows that are hanging, so to speak, and can be seen are black like a raven, not like Daniel had described it as white as the fleece of sewn, perfectly clean, perfectly white. Lo kasha. Kan, Daniel, who sees these white hairs, be yeshiva, that's when he sits in judgment, and he appears as a judge, and a judge has to appear as a zaken. So the white hairs that Daniel is describing is God sitting on the kitzeh, on the seat of judgment. Ladunes b'nei ha'adam, v'az nira kizaken. But Kan, here in the pasuk, in Shir HaShirim that describes the hairs at Shchoros, that's b'milchama. God, when he appears as Hashem Ish Milchama, Hashem Shmo, he appears as a young man whose hair is black. The Amar Mar, like we saw the statement of one of the Chachamim, Ein lecha na b'yeshiva ela zaken, ve'ein lecha na b'milchama ela bachur. So who is the greatest projection of yeshiva, meaning of a bezdin, of a judge? It's going to be a zaken, an elderly person who has wisdom with age and experience. But if you're talking about the best soldiers going out to battle, these are the young men. And their hair is going to be black. Another stira, Kasev Echana Omer, a pasuk in Daniel, when he sees the vision of God in his dream, he describes it as Karsei Shvivin Dinur. And these are sparks of fire So this is the seat of God. And from that seat, we see these sparks of fire flying out. But because of Echad Omer, in that same pasuk, at the beginning of the pasuk, Daniel says that all of his visions, in all of them, he sees Klal Yisrael in Golus, in the exile amongst the nations. Al ad di chersavun Romeo viatik Yomin Yos. Daniel obviously is written in very heavy Aramaic. And di Karsavon is a reference to kisos for sitting purposes. And until they fix these kisos, these seats, then on these seats, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who's called in this pasuk the Atik Yomin, the Ancient One, sits and judges the nations of the world. And the language Karsavan teaches us that there were two kisos. On the one hand, we have one pasuk that says that there's one kiseh. On the other hand, we have another pasuk that seems to indicate that there was more than one kiseh. Lo kash. Echad lo v'echad l'David. When Daniel sees in his vision, his original vision, he sees two thrones. One is designated for the Almighty, and the other for David and Melchizedek. It's sounding like we learned in the Brisa. Echad lo v'echad l'David, divrei Rabbi Akiva. So we have two kisos, two thrones, and that's what Daniel sees in his vision. And one is dedicated to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the other is dedicated to David. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. Well, we have a dissenting view. Omelo Rabbi Yossi Aglili Akiva ad Masai ata otze Shechina chol. You're describing the Shechina as a man sitting on a throne. And man is sitting on a throne that's next to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I mean, you're really lowering the Shechina, making it chol. Ella, but rather, says Rabbi Yossi Aglili, there are two kisos, and they're both for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But echad l'din v'echad l'tzedakah. When God sits on one, he is manifesting midas hadin, strict and harsh judgment, and when he sits on the other, he manifests tzedakah, meaning to find the kafschus for a person. Now the Gemara wants to know if Rabbi Akiva accepted the argument and the objection of Rabbi Yossi. Kibla minei or lo kibla minei? Ashma, we learned in a Brisa regarding the two thrones that appeared in the vision of Daniel. Echad l'din v'echad l'tzedakah divrei Rabbi Akiva, which would seem to indicate that Rabbi Akiva was adopting or had adopted the position of Rabbi Yossi Aglili, which means kibla mineh. Amalo Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Akiva, malacha eitzal agada. Why are you dedicating your energies, your time, and your intellectual pursuit of Haggadah, Divrei Haggadah? It would make more sense that you spend your time in halacha in the goyim and olos, hilchos chamuros, shebahem atam mechudod. You're exceptional, Rabbi Akiva, in these areas that are very difficult and challenging of the goyim and olos. And this was the way that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was sort of like pushing off Rabbi Akiva and his interpretation that God sits on two different thrones. Ella, but rather, echad l'kiseh v'echad l'shrafshraf. One was the throne, and the other was a footstool. Kisei leishev olav ishrafa fladom raglo. So you sit on the throne, and you have a shrafra, which is dedicated for Hadom Raglo. Shenemar, as it says in Yeshayahu Hanavi, Kol Amar Hashem Hashamayim Kis'i, Ve'aretz Hadom Ragloi. God is the skies are my throne. That's where I sit. And the land, the ground, is Hadom Ragloi. That's where I put my feet. It's like a footstool. In any event, we see clearly from this brisa that Rabbi Akiva was makabel the time of Rabbi Yossi HaGlili, and he rescinded his original position. And he's not going to accept that one throne is for God and the other is for David, but rather one is for Din and one is for Tzedakah. Now, back on Daf Yud Gimel, we had quoted Rabbi Ami that we should not be transmitting the secrets of the Torah, with the exception of Misha Yeshbo Es Hamailos Hamuros, those individuals who manifest the great attributes that are listed in Yeshayahu Hanavi, which are Sarah Hamishim, Nosei Panim, Yoetz, Chacham, Charshim, Novon, Lachash. He also Rav Dimi came for Yisrael to Babel Omar. He declared Shlosh Esrei, Klolos, Kilel, Yeshayahu es Yisrael. The Navi Yeshayahu cursed the Jewish people with 18 curses. V'lo daito. And you get the impression that Yeshayahu Hanavi felt that even these 18 klolos were not sufficient. So he prophesied about the peronios and the punishment that will come upon the people if they sin. But lo niskara daito, when did he finally calm down? Yeshayahu Hanavi. So they quoted this pasuk, Yerhavu hanar bizoken vanikla b'nichba. So the word Yerhavu means Yisga'u, Miloshen Gaiva, Hanar Bazoken, that the Nar, the youngster, will be proud of his grandfather, and the Nikla, someone who's humiliated, will be proud of the Nichbad, of someone who is respected. Now these words of Rav Dimi are, to the understatement, they're very ambiguous. And that's why we have to learn the next sugya to figure out what he has in mind. Shmon Esrei klolos, ma'ininu. What are the 18 klolos alluded to by Rav Dimi that Yeshayahu Hanavi was cursed b'nei Yisrael? The Gemara says, it says that Yeshayahu Hanavi was prophesying and foretelling the Churban of Bayis Rishon, Ki hinei ha'adon Hashem tzvakos meisir miyushalayim u'miyehuda, that the master of the universe is going to remove from Yerushalayim and Judea, number one, Mishan or Mashan, and we've already discussed this concept called Mashan in the past, Umishana. Number 3 is Kol Mishan Lechem. Number 4, Kol Mishan Mayim. Number 5 is Gibor. Number 6 is Ish Melchama. And we have Shofet, Navi, Kosei, Mizake, and Sar Chamish. Then we have number 12 is Nesupanim. Number 13 is Yoetz. Number 14 is Chacham. 15 Charoshim. 16 Unavon. 17 Lachash. 18 Vinasati Na'orim Soreim Visa'alulim Yimshalubam. And then it says, "V'nigash ha'am each b're'eu yirhavu anar b'zokim v'nikla b'nichla." So let's go through these 18 clothes. Mishan or Mashan. Elu Bale Mikra. These are people who are experts in the written law, what we call Torah Shebeksav. And in effect, all Chachmas HaTorah are dependent or leaning on the Bali HaMikra. Without Mikra, you don't know how to proceed. Mishana Elu Bale Mishnah. Now we're up to the next level. Bali Mishnah. Kigon. Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, the Chavera. Pliba Rav Papa Rabbanan. How much of Bekiyas is required here, Mishnah? Chad Omar. Sheish Mil Sidrei Mishnah. In their times, they had 600 Sidrei Mishnah. You had to know all of them in order to be classified as a Baal Mishnah. Echadavar, according to another opinion in their time, there were Shva Mil Sidrei Mishnah, as many as 700 Sidrei Mishnah. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave to Moshe Rabbeinu at Sinai 600 Sidrei Mishnah. Says here that Ziknei Beit Shammai and Ziknei Beit Hillel chibru es shisha sidrei mishnah. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema is before Hillel and Shammai. Kol Mishan Lochem Elu Bali Talmud. So people rely on their rulings, their decisions, like they rely on bread for Michya. Shenemar Pasukim Mishlei Lechu Lachamu Velachmi Uchisu Biyain Masachti. Go and eat from the bread that I prepared for you and drink from the wine that I diluted and poured for you. So you see that the Talmud is called Lechem. Then it says, "V'chol mishan mayim elu bali agad." Shemoshkin libo shel adam kimo mayim be'agada. The people they gravitate towards hearing agad. Gibor zebal shbuos, meaning halachas psukos. Ish milchama zeshiyodel lisa v'litem b'malchamta shel Torah. Shofet zedayan shedon din emes lamito. Navi kimashmo kosem zemelech. Shenemar, it says in Mishlei kesem al sifsei melech. So the xeros of the melech are like kesem, and they are implemented immediately. Zokin zel sharoy yeshiva, sar chamishim al tikri sar chamishim al sar chumashim, zeshi yodel lisa v'lite v'chamisha chumchei Torah. He says in the footnote here that Bali Mikra Aim Habakim B'chol Anavim Vaksuvim Aval Einam Yodim Lisa V'Litem B'hem V'yu Sar Chumshin Yodim Lisa V'Litem B'chamisha Chumshei Torah Ach Eino Baki B'Shar Kisvei HaKodesh. All this in the name of the Maharsha. Dover Acher Sar Chamishim Kid Rebbe Avo. The Omer Rabbi Avo Mikan, from this pasuk we derive she'ein ma'amidim miturgavan al atzibur pachos michamishim shana. The person who is mashmiya, he hears the drasha from the Rav, and then he in his ears, and then he projects it with his voice to the tzibur. And he should not be less than 50 years old. And that's what the pasuk means. She is batlu me'am Yisrael anoshim sheroy lahamid lehem miturgaman. Unesu panim zeh shenosnim panim lidoro avuro. That he brings down from heaven and a siyas part of his whole generation. And there are two classifications of Nisu Panim. There's Lamaila, there is someone up in Shamayim, Kigon Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, Shekol ha'olam hayanizam b'schuso, v'nei chayagadol b'masim yosef v'kol b'nei doro. I'm not sure if this is during his lifetime or even after his death. Let me just see if it says anything. Lemata kigon Rabbi Avo b'Kesa, in the house or the palace of the Kesa. And in both these cases, there was Nesias Panim that was brought down to Klal Yisrael, either by someone like Reb Chanina ben Dosa, or like someone like Rabbi Avo. Yoetz, Sheodea la'aver shonim l'kvor chadashim. Chacham, zeh talmid ha'machines rabosa. Charoshim, v'shah sheposeach b'divrei Sorah, hakol nasim kechershim. Why Kechershim? Because they cannot refute his words. V'navon zamevin davritol over lachash zesheroi limsor lo divrei Torah shenitna b'lachash. So we're talking about it Av Bezdin, or Misha Libo Doeg. He's a Yoreh. He expresses humility, and the pasuk concludes in Asata Ne'orim Soreim. So the Gemara asks, what does it mean? Unasati Ne'orim Soreim. Om Rab Lazar Elu Bnei Adam Shemino Orim Mina Mitzvahs. They are emptied out of mitzvahs. And yet they are sarim, they are officers, and they hold dominion over Klal Yisrael. The pasuk says, "V'salulim yimchelubam." What does the word salulim mean? Omarav Acha Bar Yaakov, Shamoshlim b'Yisrael yu ta'ole b'nei ta'ole, shualim b'nei shualim. Low people. And this is the sum total of 18 klolos that Yeshayahu cursed the Jewish people. And yet Yeshayahu was not calm. That it was said to them, we'll soon see by whom, Yerhavu hanar bezokim. We said before that Yerhavu is miloshen Geus. Yizgoya hanar bazokim. Elu bnei adam shemino orim na mitzvahs. Yerhavu b'mi shememule b'mula b'mitzvahs karimon. That even though they're far from mitzvahs, but nevertheless, Yerhavu, Yizgo, they are proud of those who are full of mitzvahs like a rima. And then the pasuk says, "Vanikla banichbad." What does that mean? Yavo mishe hamitzvahs hachamuros domos olav kikalos. V'yerhavu b'mishe kalos domos olav kichamuros. And they take pride in those who considered the so-called light mitzvahs as if they were heavy and significant mitzvahs. Now, the next part of the psukim that we're darshaning refer to the Mei Churban. And these psukim are very difficult. The Gemara now is going to try to interpret them. Omer av ktina, afilu b'shas kishlona shel Yerushalayim. Even when Yerushalayim was falling down, lo posku me'em balei amona. There were still people who spoke truth. Shenemar, it says, with regard to Shas HaChurban, Ki yitfos ish be'achiv beis aviv. Beis aviv means his relatives. V'yomru lo. Simla lecha Kotzin tia lana. So what is this word similar? It seems that the word similar here is a metaphor for dvarim shebnei adam is kasim. People hide and cover themselves with a simla, and so too divrei Torah, that people who don't know Torah, they hide, they conceal themselves so that people won't ask them questions. They don't want to be humiliated. It's like when my Rebbe used to ask for an answer to a question, everybody's head went down. All of a sudden, everyone was absent. And they were concealed, like a simla that conceals, covers the body. And then it says, Lecha, Shalcha, Yeshnon, Tachas Yodcha, meaning you have it under your hand into control, you know you're Baki, and therefore, Katzim Tielon. Teach us Chachma. Then the pasuk says, "V'machshela hazos tachas yodecha." My v'machshela hazos dvarim she'ein b'nei adam omdim aleh. These are things, areas of knowledge that they cannot fathom and know them well. Ella imkain nichshal b'hem. Unless sometimes they mistakenly misunderstand the Torah, and people set them straight. Mamidim oso al ta'uso is yeshnon tachas yodch. There below your arm, so to speak, you're a bucky in them, and therefore be for them a kotzin utlamdenu chachma. Yisa bayom ahu lemar lo eye chovesh ubeveisi ein lechem or lachem the ein simla. Ein lechem the ein simla, and therefore lo tesimuni ktzin on. What does this mean? Yisa ein Yisa lashon shvua. Shenever lo tisa shem Hashem alekech lasham. Lo eye chovesh, lo hayisi michovshe beis hamedrash. I was not a regular in the beis medrash to study Torah, and therefore ubebeisi ein lechem ein simla. In my house, I have no lechem and simla. She'ein biyodi lo mikra v'lo mishnah v'lo gemara. Therefore, don't make me into a katzin, into a malamed. In any event, we see from this that lo pasku miyushalayim anochim tovrei emes. Sharek shahoyu anshe Yerushalayim mevakshin me'odem shilamdim Torah hayu mishiven es emes lo hurgal v'yeni yodei lilmod. They didn't falsify and misrepresent themselves. They were quite frank and honest, and they admitted the truth that they were not used to and they didn't know how to learn. So the Gemara asks, Vidilma, maybe in truth, Pasku mehem anshe amona, but Shani Hasam, this pasuk is different. And even though Pasku anshe amona, nevertheless, he's telling the truth that he doesn't know how to learn. Te'i amalahu mirna, if he'll tell them that this is true that he learned, Amrile Amalach, they'll test him, they'll quiz him, they'll ask him questions and they'll demand answers, they'll require answers. He won't know how to answer and he'll be embarrassed. So it's better for him to tell the truth. So this is the Gemara's kasha. And the Gemara answers, I can still prove to you that there was a person, a Dover Emes, because if he wanted to lie, he could have answered, I learned, but I forgot it. That's a little bit less embarrassing. Umay lo eyeh chovesh. What does it mean? I won't be a chovesh. Lo eyeh chovesh klal. Not that he learned it, but he forgot it, but that he never learned it to begin with. So again, we prove that lo pasku b'Yushalayim anshi emuna v'dovrei emes. Whereas Eini, is this really so? V'amar Rava lo charva Yushalayim anshi pasku mimena balei amona. So the Churban was brought about because there was no longer balei amona. Shenemar in Yirmiyahu's Nevuah on the Churban of Yerushalayim, it says shotetu bachutzos Yerushalayim uru'una udeu ubakshu berchavosel im timtzu ish. Im yesh osem mishpat or mavakesh amona. Even if there's one person of that sort, of that high ilk, eslach lo, I will not destroy the city. I'll grant slicha. So you see, poskim Yerushalayim anshe amona. So the Yesach Lo means v'lo achrivos, I won't destroy it. So poskum Yerushalayim anshe emes and emuna. And this against Rav Katina, who said lo poskum Yerushalayim anshe emuna afilu b'shas hakurba. Where it says lo kasha, and here on the top of Daf Yudalad on the base, ha b'divrei Torah, ha b'masumat. Where Rav Katina was speaking about Divrei Torah. Rava was talking about Masumat. The Divrei Torah Havu, there were Anshe Amona that only spoke the truth. And then B'Masumat lo Havu, lo hayu Anshe Amona, lo nisu v'nitnu be'amuna, nasu v'notnu be'amuna. Right, this is where we'll stop for today. The Agadah is very, very long and complicated. So we're on the top of Daf Yudalid Amid Beis, Tanur Rabbanan on the second line. So let me just think about tomorrow.